All right, so now we're going to talk about how to actually find areas or percentiles underneath the normal curve. And we're going to do it first using z-scores, and then we're going to go into using actual measurements of the normal distribution to find it. So in order to do this, we're going to use, instead of using Excel, we're actually going to use the Desmos graphing calculator. And if you want to, you can scan the QR code with your phone, and it'll bring up the calculator. And we're going to use the function normal distribution, which is located under the functions tab right here. We're going to use the normal distribution function, all right? So in order to do this, let's look at an example. So for this to work, we're going to assume everything, we're doing these z-score problems. Here's what we're going to do first. We're always going to draw a curve. And on the curve, we're going to label the curve with the z-score that's given to us. So if we look at example 1, it says 1.56. So I'm going to locate 1.56 on the curve, which is about here. And this symbol tells me to be less than that. So I want to shade that to the left. Now, once I have this, what we do next is, if you come up here, it says, you're going to check these things out. Because it's a normal curve, and the normal curve, you need to have two things. You need the mean and the standard deviation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to function, find the normal distribution. Under distributions, I'm going to find the normal distribution. I'm going to type in, and if you notice here, they're already to begin with, it already says mean equals 0, standard deviation 1. So if you don't type anything in, it'll leave it as 0 and 1. And so for z-scores, we don't have to type anything in. We can leave it like it is, just like this. Or we can do 0, 1. And now the next thing we're going to do then, on this next part, the minimum value, you're going to check the one that says find cumulative probability, because we're trying to find a cumulative probability. And so the way this works is you're going to set a lower and upper bound depending on what your values are. In this particular curve, the lower bound starts at negative infinity. The upper bound, or the most maximum value that it can be, is positive infinity. Now, we start on the left at our shading. So our shading, because this curve goes on forever to negative infinity, the shading is going to go all the way out here to negative infinity. So our lower bound is going to stay at negative infinity. If you notice that it says the minimum is negative infinity. But we're stopping it at this z-score, which is 1.56. So the maximum that we're going to go up to is 1.56. And when we do that, we see that our actual area, or the percentile that we're at, is 0.9406. So let's look at example 2. This one says I want to be greater than 1.56. So I'm in the same z-score spot, except I'm going greater than. So that means I'm on this side. And again, notice that the shading is going to go on forever on this side. So the shading goes forever to positive infinity. And that is the upper. So for this one, my shading starts, or the lower is where it's starting at, is at 1.56. So over here, I'll put in 1.56. And notice that it leaves an infinity there. And this is the actual area. .0594. So let's look at example 3. Z is less than negative 2.79. So again, we come on here. 2.79 is somewhere out here. And you can tell if it's less than, it's going to be a very small area right here. This goes on forever. And remember, so our lower here, again, is just negative infinity. And we're stopping at this value, which is a negative 2.79. So I'll do over here, negative 2.79. When I do that, notice how small this value is. And from our curve, we can see that it should be a very small area. So it's 0.0026. The next one says Z is greater than negative 0.74. So that's going to be about here. And we want to be greater than that, so we're to the right of it like this. And you can see that it should be at least bigger than 50% because half the curve is on this side already. So it's a little bit bigger than 50%. So we'll come back over here. We see that we're starting this time at negative 0.74. And we're going to go up to that positive infinity value. And here's what we get. 0.74. 0.7704. And then this last one, look where we're going from. We have two z-scores. We're going to go from negative 1.25, which is about here, up to positive 2, which is here. So this time you're bounded by negative 1.25 and positive 2. So your lower bound this time actually starts here. Your shading starts at negative 1.25. And your upper bound, the shading stops at 2.00. And there's your area, 0.8716. So what you'll see is that for all of these problems, the first thing you always want to do is start with a curve, a drawn curve, label it with the mean, and then locate values on the curve to help you do your shading.